Good morning. Today is the topic of selection as a part of human resource management subject for the students of semester 2. To introduce myself, I am Professor Bharti V. Sungar from Department of Management Studies, STM College of Engineering and Technology. So before going ahead with this topic of selection, let us try to recall what we had discussed in the previous session. It was recruitment. So recruitment is what basically recruitment is calling for applications. So whenever there are job openings in the organization, you try to use different kinds of sources for recruiting the candidates. So here, recruiting the candidates means you are trying to provoke or motivate the people who are fit for that job to apply for the job and attend the selection processes. As we already know, recruitment is a positive approach and selection is a negative approach. The reason why is recruitment, here you try to get or attract as many as applications as possible. But when it comes to selection, you try to deduct the applications or shortlist the applications at every stage of the process. So with this small introduction, let us begin today's topic, that is selection. Selection is a process of trying to find out the suitable candidates for the job openings in the organization. And these candidates will be suitable based on their qualification and experience. Here, it is not only the selection which matters, but also trying to choose the best candidate for the organization. It is an attempt to strike a happy balance between the applicant and all applicant requirements and also what the organization requires. So there are four basic essentials when it comes to selection. So what are these essentials? What are the things which we require so that the selection happens smoothly in the organization? The very first thing is whether the individuals possess relevant qualifications and experiences or not. So has to be assessed before going ahead with the selection processes. Then, secondly, whether the job requirements are matching with the profile of the candidates or not. So, job requirements, nothing but job specification. We already have discussed it in the topic of job analysis in the previous sessions. So here, this job specification will tell us what are the qualifications required to perform that particular job and what qualifications or experience the candidates are required to have so that they can perform that job in a better manner is what is to be understood. Then you should also have knowledge about multiple tools and techniques which are used so that the most suitable candidates who are capable for the job is to be identified. And the lastly, whether the candidate is really successful in the job or not, or performs successfully the job or not, has to be assessed. So these are some things which you have to keep in mind while going ahead with the selection process. Coming to the process of selection, which is a very important part of this topic, that is the process of selection. It starts with reception and it ends with the hiring decision. So what is this reception? Whenever an applicant applies for a job in the organization, he or she is screened, and that screening results in inviting you for the further rounds of selection process. So when you are invited for the organization for the further selection rounds, the first contact for you and the organization is at the reception counter. So here you need to always give a warm and a friendly, courteous reception which is extended to the candidates so that you try to create a very favorable impression on the candidates. They should feel happy to be a part of this organization. And all the terms and conditions related to the employment are to be communicated honestly and clearly at the reception counter itself. So once you have received your candidates, you have to ensure that they are sitting in a proper place, waiting for their turn of selection. So after that, You can conduct a screening interview. And one more thing I just forgot is this process is not the exact which is being followed by all the organization. There is no compulsion that the same process is to be followed. The companies have their own processes of selection which they can follow or which they can use during the time of selection. For every levels and every category of jobs, they may also have different kinds of selection processes. So coming to the second stage, that is screening interview. So here, instead of going ahead with a detailed selection process, you can understand whether the candidate fits for the job or not. So it's a kind of a courtesy interview where you try to build a rapport with them and at the same time try to understand skills like whether he or she is good in communication, in language, in behavior, and in terms of knowledge. So here, basic interview is being screening interview is being conducted by the HR department to check whether he fits or misfits through for the organization. Once he or she is done with the screening interview, then comes an application blank. Application blank is a kind of a form. It's a printed form wherein all the job aspirants are supposed to fill it and submit it to the organization. So this application blank, why it is needed or why it is being used in the organizations, let us try to understand. When it comes to resume, we have already discussed what is a resume. So let us not have the topic again here. So when it comes to resume, every individual has their own formats of designing or putting their information in the resume. It becomes very difficult for the screening panel or the selection panel to compare and contrast between the candidates. So for that reason, what they do is they give a common format for all the job aspirants who are willing to apply for the job. So these candidates are supposed to fill up that printed form or online application wherein that is being used to compare and contrast between the candidates. So comparison between the candidates becomes very easy when the application is very standard and it is being filled across by all the candidates who are applying for the job. So what does this application actually contain? It requests you data for your personal data like address, your gender, your identification marks, your phone number, contact details or such that. It also may include information related to your marital status. It can include physical data because some jobs may require your physical fitness, like the jobs in police department where your height, weight and health condition matter a lot. Your educational data, what kind of levels of formal education you have received, what are the marks or grades you have achieved. So these are some things which they will be looking for when it comes to education. And your employment data, your past experience, what promotions you have got, for what reason you have got those promotions, what were the roles and responsibilities assigned to you in the previous job where you are working, why did you actually leave that previous job, what was the salary, the last salary drawn in the previous job. So these are some things which will be sought by you from you. Then they will also check for whether you are a outspoken person, wherein they will ask or seek information related to your extracurricular activities like sports, games, NCC, any prizes won, any hobbies you have cultivated or something like that. Even this application blank may ask you to give one or two names of references whom you know. This is for trying to certify or trying to check the credibility of the information what you have given to the organization. So this is what they will be looking for in application blank. Here is a sample application blank which you can look for and try to study it. There is a method of screening the candidates through an application. So this application method, screening of the candidates is called as weighted application blank. It's also called as WAB, W-A-B. So the items that have a strong relationship to the job performance are given numeric values or weights so that a company can cross and compare the candidates with more or less similar qualifications on paper. So weights are assigned to specific factors or items in the application, and based on that weights whatever the candidates achievements are. Okay, so that will be compared to the other candidates, and shortlisting of the candidates can be done very easily. So the next stage, once the application is being received, the next stage is the selection testing. So here many kinds of tests can be conducted here, such like aptitude or intelligence tests like aptitude test, your personality test, certain projective tests, interest tests, preference tests. So like this, where there are varieties of tests we can find. So we'll just look into one by one. Intelligence test, or it may also have this aptitude test or logical reasoning test, where objective kind of questions are given to you people. It may be in the time in the category of reasoning skills, it may be in the category of non reasoning skills, like English, uh, such kind of, where objective questions will be given with options, and you have to, a limited time option is given, and where you have to answer those questions. Then personality tests, you have MBTI test, you have online personality test, you have psychometric tests, big five model tests. Okay, so they will try to help you to understand what kind of a person you are. So these kind of tests are conducted. Maybe for an example, a big five model test, there are certain set of questions which are being asked to you. You have to give your answer to those questions. The ratings you have to understand and give the answers to those questions, and based on the ratings what kind of category or personality you possess is being tested. There are many online personality tests also which you can take for. Then we have projective tests. Projective tests are something wherein situations are given, or a picture is given to you, and you have to understand and give your opinion regarding that picture. So by this, they will, the selection committee will try to understand what are your motives, what are your attitudes, what are your values as a person. That is projective tests. One of the projective test is ink blot test, where you just pour some ink on the paper and you fold it. So a kind of an imprint is created on the paper there, and this kind of an imprint is shown to a person who is being through the selection process. He has to give his comments on that picture. So that's a projective technique. Then interest test. These are meant to find how a person in tests compare with the interests of successful people in a specific job. These tests show the areas of work in which the person is more interested in. Preference test. These tests try to compare the employee's preferences with the job and the organizational requirement. Then comes your achievement tests. These kind of tests are designed to measure what the applicant can do on the job currently, whether the candidate knows what he or she claims. So to understand that, achievement tests are conducted. Simulation exercises are something where you try to duplicate the activities which the employees may come across in the workplace. So something like when you go for a driving test, you may have to give a simulation test before actual driving, you know, so car driving license or something like that. So that is a kind of a simulation test. So in case if in an organization, you may have to operate a machinery, or you may have to work on a software, or you may have to develop a software. So these are some simulation tests which can be conducted. Assessment center is another technique which can be used for selection. So center means it's not a place here. It's a kind of set of activities wherein are being used up for assessment here. So these activities may be in basket exercises where a lot of letters, memos, reports or such kind of things are put up in a basket and it is given to the candidate. So using that information, the candidate has to act or react upon those informations in a limited time frame. So those are in basket exercises. Then there are leaderless group discussions where A team is formed, and you have to sit, you have to communicate, and you have to come out with problems, job related problems. So here your oral communication skills, your tolerance levels, your self confidence, your the way you adapt to the group are being tested here. So nobody will tell you what you are supposed to do. A group is prepared, is created, and you are just given some time frame, and you have to start discussing what kind of problems you may face and what solutions are there for to solve those problems at the workplace. Then business games, a very simple business game is team building activities. So these are some things like small team building activities are given to you people, wherein you have to, as a team, you have to solve those problems, or you have to compete with the other people in the selection process. Individual presentations, these are some activities at a higher level of selection processes are given, where a very limited amount of time is given to you to plan, organize, and prepare a presentation on a given topic. So these are some techniques which can be used to select the candidates. Other than this, to test the integrity of the candidate, there are certain tests which are available. Graphology test. So graphology tests help you to understand, based on understand the person's personality and emotion based on his handwriting. So how he writes, what are the what is the thickness of the line, what kind of loops are there, hooks are there, strokes are there, curves are there in the person's handwriting. So based on that, person's personality is being tested. There is another very easy test which is used by using a machine here. It's a lie detector, wherein you are connected to a machine, and which records your respiration and blood pressure. Based on that, whether you are telling the truth or a lie is being tested. Integrity test. I'll give you a simple example. Let's say when you are walking through the reception counter, a 1,000 rupee note has fallen down on the floor. Okay, so you go, you just watch it and go like that. You pick it up and keep in your pocket, or you pick it up and give it at the reception counter. So these are certain things which are being observed by somebody, maybe through a camera. So this is for integrity testing. So there are a lot of kind of tests used up in India by many companies like Siemens, LG, PepsiCo, and such kind of companies. We'll just go through them to try to get some idea about what kind of tests are more popular in the big giants of our country. Siemens India company, is a very big company into automotive as well as computer sector, where it uses psychometric instruments to evaluate the candidates. So they give a lot of importance to the personality of the candidate, wherein they say that if the candidate personality suits the organization, then they will be performing much better compared to other people. LG Electronics company, it uses three levels of psychometric tests to measure the person's ability as a team player, to check the personality type, and also to ascertain whether the person is responsive and assertive. Then there is another company, Arthur Anderson, which evaluates the candidates by conducting a critical behavioral interview test for them. Here, the candidate will be looked for largely based on his past experiences and credentials. Then PepsiCo India, it is very big company when it comes to global recruitment source. To select the professionals for global careers with it, the company uses a competency-based interviewing technique here. So lateral thinking, problem solving abilities, managing the environment, these are certain things they will be looking for in a candidate. So we looked into a variety of tests, what can be used up for shortlisting the candidates at every level of the selection process. So a very important part of the selection process is also the selection interview. Interview has its own advantage. The reason why is the other tests, maybe the candidate may not be tested through a face-to-face discussion, but a candidate has to go through this interview process where a face-to-face discussion happens, wherein the job applicant's knowledge is being tested by the selection committee. So it is a very important source of information when it comes to the job applicants. So varieties of selection interviews can be conducted here, uh, which is actually done on 3 stages, which we'll be discussing a bit later. So we'll try to understand what are the various types of selection interviews. So the recruiter asks, when it comes to the first one, the non-directive interview. The recruiter here asks the questions as and they come to the mind. There is no structured way of conducting this interview here. So depending upon what answers are being given by the applicant or the candidate, based on that, again, the questions are generated and again the questions are being asked. There is no direction or there is no structured format for this kind of a interview. The second test is the structured interview, also known as a directive interview, for the reason it goes in a specific direction. In this kind of an interview, already there are certain set of questions which are related to the job. And the same set of questions have to be asked to every candidate who is going to attend that interview. The recruiter or the selection panel or the committee will be using this predetermined set of questions which are related to the job to be asked to those candidates. The third is the situational interview, a kind of a hypothetical or an assumption or a simulation activity is given to the candidate and he is asked to respond. If this kind of a problem is happening in the HR department, what you are going to do or what will be your reaction towards that situation. So such kind of hypothetical incidents are being asked to the candidate and the candidate is asked to respond back to that situation here. Behavioral interview, it focuses mainly on the actual work related incidents here. So provided what kind of situation is given, how the applicant or the candidate is going to behave is what is tested here. Stress interview is something where applicant, what is their tolerance level or what is their patience levels, how he aggressively responds back, whether he feels embarrassed, whether he feels insulted during certain times of rude questions. These are some things which will be tried to understood through a stress interview. Panel interview is something where 3 or 4 interviewers will be posing questions continuously to the applicant to examine the suitability of the candidate here. So these are the varieties of selection interviews which normally we come across. So a lot of interview mistakes the recruiter or the selection team makes here. So what are those mistakes? And they are very important for the reason they may end up in wrong selections. So let us try to understand what are these interviewing mistakes. Favoritism. Okay, so what happens is many a times, let us take an example. A candidate is attending an interview and that candidate is from the same place from where the selection committee member also hails from. So during this situation, favoritism may play its role, and wherein because he belongs to my place, the selection panel may actually end up in wrong selection of the candidate. If you are not able to establish a good rapport with the candidates, of course it's a failure. For the reason why is many candidates are there who are intelligent, who are highly skilled, who are very very capable for the job, but because they're not so confident, they're not so good with their communication, they may end up in not answering the interviewer's question. So you have to make the candidates very comfortable. So rapport building is very very important in the interview process so that they can open up in front of you. not being able to ask right questions. Of course, it is the reason because the recruiter or the selection committee is not ready with the interview process. As the candidate has to be prepared for the interview, at the same time the interviewer also has to be prepared for the interview. He should know how he is supposed to behave in an interview, how what kind of questions are to be asked in the interview. So his homework should be ready, then only he can be a very good interviewer in the process. Resorting to snap judgments. So just on first impression, you're not supposed to judge that candidate. Okay, let's say that candidate has somewhere misbehaved, or he may not be confident in the initial stage of an interview. Based on only that observation, you just should not come to a decision that the candidate is not fit for the job. Showing leniency. So this is one more mistake what the recruiter makes here, wherein you try to be too much lenient with the candidates and they may make use of your leniency. Being influenced by cultural noise. If you are belonging to the same caste, same community, same place, same culture, so your decisions should never be influenced by them. Stereotyping is something wherein because somebody has done, let us say like one candidate comes from a particular college. The company has a very bad experience with the students coming from that college for the campus recruitment. You are not supposed to judge that then this new candidate is also not suitable for the job. So that stereotyping, that being influenced should not be there. Biasness, partiality should never happen in the interview. Halo effect and being influenced by the body language of the candidate. So these are some things which you have to avoid as much as possible during conducting interview. Candidate order error is something wherein most of the time what happens is the candidates who come first, they are taken thorough interviews for hours together, and the candidates who come last, they are taken interviews hardly conducted, the interviews are conducted for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So the candidate who is taken 5 minutes or 10 minutes interview may score more than what the candidate has gone through for almost an hour of an interview. So that kind of influence should not happen in the interview. So this interview process actually is conducted in 4 phases. These 4 phases are preparation, reception, information exchange, and termination. So what is this preparation? As I told you, just like the candidates have to prepare themselves for the job, the interviewers also should be prepared for the interview process. They should do their homework. They should be prepared with what questions are supposed to be asked to the candidates. Who are the candidates who are going to attend the interviews? Where is the interview being conducted? Right? So these are certain things which they are supposed to be prepared in the preparation phase. After that, it's a reception phase where you receive the candidate and you shake hands with them or her. You make sure that the candidate feels homely. You start building the rapport with the candidate. Why this is very important? Because most of the times, due to the fear of an interview, the best knowledgeable candidate may be lost for the company. So for that reason, you should ensure that the candidate feels homely, feels comfortable, a rapport is built up with him or her so that she can be more open in terms of answering your questions. So that is the reception phase. After that, once the rapport is built up, slowly you can start asking the candidate with basic information like from where he comes from, what is his job qualification, why actually he is here, what he knows about the job, what he knows about the company. So such kind of basic questions can be asked to the candidate. At the later stages of the interview process, you can go deep into the technical requirements for the job. So once the information is exchanged between the interviewer and the interviewee here, the interview process has to be terminated. That is the last phase of the interview process. So once you finish the information exchange phase, that in the termination phase, you should ensure that you give a chance to the interviewee also to ask questions or clarify any doubts he or she is having. So once the doubts are cleared, once the questions are being answered by you for the candidate, you should ensure that a summary of the whole interview process is given to the candidate. So once that summary is given to the candidate, you should uh, shake hands with the candidate before he or she leaves the room, and ensure that, and also sometimes some interviewers may also give the deadlines where they are going to get the results. So these are some things which you have to ensure in the interview process. The last stage of the selection process is the medical examination and the reference checking. So medical examination plays a very important role here, because certain companies are there where medical fitness plays a very important role. Something like police department job openings, or it may be job openings which are related to people working in mining areas, something like that. There medical fitness, let us say like a person who is supposed to be employed in a mining area, if he is a asthma patient, he cannot be recruited, he cannot be selected for the job. So for that reason, medical examination is very very important. And the last part is the reference checking, where whatever information you have given, or whatever information you have shared with the interviewer or that organization for which you are going to you are planning to work for, that information has to be cross verified, it has to be checked. So sometimes in the application blank only, they will be asking you to give reference names. So the company will call up those references to check your credibility, whether your whatever information you have provided, it is true or not. So that cross verification is being done through reference checking. So with this, hiring decision is made, and the information is passed on to the candidate, that whether he is being shortlisted, he is being selected to the job or not. So with this topic, we complete the topic of selection. Okay, so let me just get back to the process of selection today. Once again, just let us repeat the process of selection. Yes, it starts with reception. An initial screening interview is being conducted. Application blank is being received from the candidates who are attending the selection process. Different types of selection tests are conducted. An interview is being conducted. Varieties of interviews are available which you can use to conduct depending upon the situations. Medical examination of the candidate is supposed to be conducted to check the fitness of the candidate. Reference check for cross verification of the data being provided by the candidate is needed. And the last is the decision of hiring. So with this, the process of selection is completed. So today, guys, we have come to know how the selection process works. So we need to understand that this selection process plays a very important role in the organization, because if any time the company will end up in wrong hiring, it is the company which is going to face lot of problems. Okay, so with this, we'll close this chapter of selection.